Hello, I am Mrs. Anjali Nadgoda and we are in continuation with unit number 8, the D and F block elements. Already in last lecture we have seen some of the properties and the variations of D block elements. What are D block elements and how they are showing the different properties or gradual change in properties across the period in different series that already we have learned. Okay, so in last class we have completed till ionization enthalpy. Now today we are going to study one more important and the notable property of or notable feature of a transition element or transition metal, that they are showing the various oxidation state or variety of oxidation state. Already this property we have seen in p block elements also in group 15 or group 16 elements, but there is little bit difference in the oxidation state shown by p block elements and d block elements. Okay, so here these elements they are showing positive oxidation states, that is they are metals. Okay, whereas in p block we have studied that they are showing negative oxidation states also, and the difference between the oxidation state shown by any one element differ by 2. It may be plus 2 or it may be minus 2, but here the difference is of unity means 1. Okay, so now this oxidation state property is because of what? Incomplete filling of d orbitals, that is partially filled d orbitals. Then oxidation state differ from each other by unity, and this is given in next slide as a chart. Okay, now in low oxidation state are found when a complex compound has ligands capable of pi acceptor character in addition to the sigma bonding. Okay, for example, NiCO4, nickel tetracarbonyl, or iron pentacarbonyl. So here oxidation state of nickel and Fe is 0. Now this is possible only in complex compounds. Okay. Now here is the chart. Now in this chart the bold letters oxidation state is the very important oxidation state, and these are most common oxidation state. So if you go from scandium to zinc, you can see for scandium it is showing only one oxidation state, that is plus 3, whereas zinc shows only plus 2 oxidation state, because after gaining this oxidation state means after losing the outermost 3 electrons from scandium or after losing 2 electrons from zinc, they get stable electronic configuration with D0 or D10 configuration. Means the d orbitals are either not filled or it is completely filled. Okay, then if you go from titanium to copper, they are showing various oxidation state, and if you see here the trend changes, like this is showing 3, this is showing 4, means the number of oxidation state shown by the element is maximum at the middle of the period, whereas it goes on decreasing at the end of the period, means from scandium to zinc. Okay, now here which element is showing maximum oxidation state? It is Mn, that is manganese, which is showing plus 7 as a maximum oxidation state, as well as it is showing 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, total 6 oxidation states. And because of this special property of D block elements, they are showing further very important properties like color or catalyst, or they can form the complex compounds, and that we will learn in next slides. So let us start with trends in standard electrode potential. Now what is meant by electrode potential is the potential developed when a metal is dipped in its own ions. if the solution is of 1 molar, then we say that potential difference which is developed is standard electrode potential. And if you see the graph which is given as figure number 8.4 in the government textbook, you will come to know how it changes. Okay, now which parameters are related to this transformation is the thermochemical parameters, like the energy of atomization, means separation of the atom, then that is separation of metal atom, or else enthalpy of, that is ionization enthalpy. It is first ionization enthalpy and second ionization enthalpy. So these are the thermochemical parameters. Even the hydration enthalpy is also responsible for the trends in standard electrode potential. Okay, so thermochemical parameters are related to the transformation of solid metal, that is M, to M2 plus ions. M2 plus means losing 2 electrons in a solution when it is when that metal rod is dipped in its own ion solution. Okay, and their standard electrode potential. So these electrode potential values becomes less negative across the series. Now you have to refer table number 8.4 and you will get the values of E naught in voltage. Okay, E naught per volt is given. You can see the values here. It goes on, it becomes less negative across the series from titanium to zinc. Here scandium is not considered. Okay, now it is related to general increase in sum of first and second ionization enthalpies. So if you see here the sum of the oxidation sum of the ionization first and second ionization enthalpy, you will come to know how the change goes on. But this variation is not similar, or it is not gradual change. Somewhere it is increasing, or somewhere the value becomes less negative, and somewhere it becomes more negative. Okay, now for example, value of E naught for manganese, nickel and zinc are more negative than expected from the trend. Give reason, or such question can be asked for why. The stability of the half-filled d subshell in Mn2 plus means when the 2 electrons are lost from Mn atom, that is Mn metal, it becomes stable because of d phi configuration, that is exactly half filled, and hence the value of Mn becomes more negative, that is minus 1.18. Similarly, this happens for Zn2 plus also because of completely filled D10 configuration. Now 2 plus means 2 electrons are lost. Now these are related to their electrode potential values. Okay. Whereas E naught for nickel is related to highest negative value of delta H hydration enthalpy, means addition of water molecule. So this is highest energy, and hence nickel is having highest negative values compared to the other elements. So if you see that table, you will come to know what exactly. Now let us study the next which is very important property, is magnetic property. Two more trends are given in the textbook, that is 8.3.6, trends in M3 plus and M2 or M2 plus ions, that is standard electrode potential, and trends in stability of higher oxidation state with respect to halogens. It is given, you can read it, okay, and go through it. Next we have to study is magnetic property. Now, many substances are attracted towards the magnetic field, or there are some substances which are repelled by the magnetic field. So, according to this, the substances are classified as diamagnetic or paramagnetic. Now, this property is also shown in D block elements. When we are studying these properties, we are studying especially for 3D series, that is first D series, that is from scandium to zinc. Now on which this magnetic property depends? It depends mainly on unpaired electrons. If the number of unpaired electrons are more, that substance or that element is highly magnetic. Means it gets highly attracted towards magnetic field. Okay. And the one which does not contain any unpaired electrons, means if all the electrons are paired, then they are repelled by the magnetic field. So such substances are called as diamagnetic. Okay. So there are two types of properties or behavior which are shown by D block elements. Diamagnetic, that is substances are repelled by magnetic field, whereas paramagnetic, their substances are attracted by magnetic field. Now in this, one more property, special property is shown, that is extreme form of paramagnetism, which is called as ferromagnetism. Means these elements, there are few elements in this series only which are strongly attracted towards the magnetic field. For example, iron, cobalt and nickel. So these are called as ferromagnetic substances. Now how this magnetism is calculated? Okay. So in first sentence I told you paramagnetism arises from the presence of unpaired electron, and each such electron having a magnetic moment associated with spin angular momentum and orbital angular momentum. What does this spin angular momentum is? We know that whenever the electrons in the atom, they are always moving around the nucleus. Remember, when they are moving around the nucleus, simultaneously they are moving clockwise and anti-clockwise. That is, these are called as spin motion. Means they are moving around itself also. That is on about the own axis. This motion is called as spin angular momentum. Whereas when it is moving around the nucleus, we call it as orbital angular momentum. And because of this moving charge particle or motion of the charge particle, every electron becomes tiny magnet. So if there are unpaired electrons, they become more magnetic. If they are paired, the motion get cancelled, that is spin motion get cancelled, and hence the magnetism decreases, or we can say they are repelled by the magnetic field. Okay. Now if we study for first transition elements, that is 3D series, the contribution of orbital angular momentum is effectively quenched. Means it is suppressed, and hence it has no significance. So which we are considering? Only spin angular momentum, that is rotation about its own axis. Okay. Therefore, the magnetic moment can be determined by the formula as mu is equal to, this is mu is equal to square root of n into n plus 2, where what is n? N is number of unpaired electrons and mu is magnetic moment. The unit of magnetic moment is Bohr magneton, which is shown by capital B M. Okay. Now how to calculate this unpaired number of electrons? So for that again one formula is there. What is that? Is Z minus oxidation state minus 18. So this will give you the number of electrons or unpaired electrons. For example, if atomic number Z is 27 is given. Okay. Then how to calculate the number of unpaired electron or how to calculate mu value? So for that, Z is nothing but atomic number. Now if it is 2 plus, for that element, if it is the charge is given as 2 plus, means oxidation state is what? 2. So we have to subtract 2. So 27 minus 2 is 25. Minus 18. That is nothing but 7. But we know that in d orbitals, there are 5 different orbitals, that is dxy, dyz, dxz, dx square minus y square and dz square. Means how many columns we are writing for d? 5 columns. Is it? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Is it? And how we are filling the electrons? 1, 2, 3, 4 and 5. Right? So 6 and 7 will get pair. Means how many unpaired electrons are there? Only 3. So if the number is greater than 5, then how we have to calculate? We have to calculate as 10 minus that number of electrons. So you will get the exact number of unpaired electrons. And by knowing the unpaired electrons, we can substitute the value of n. And then we can find out the square root. Okay. So this is how we can calculate the magnetic moment. Now the question is asked to calculate the magnetic moment of any one element, and one such example is given in example 8.8. Okay. Or else you can write the electronic configuration and then you can find out the number of electrons. But this is the formula which I told. Z minus oxidation state minus 18 is the simplest formula to calculate the value of n. Okay. Next, magnetic moment increases with increasing number of unpaired electrons. Now, one more special property which is shown by these d block elements, for example copper is reddish color or reddish color, then gold, it is golden yellow, whereas silver is shining white. Is it? So iron is of black color but it is shining. So all these elements of d block all these elements of d block, they are showing the color properties except few, for example scandium or zinc. Now you may think of why these only elements or the extreme elements are colorless. It is again, the reason is because they are not having the partially filled d orbitals, that is absence of unpaired electrons. Means the color property depends on what? Presence of unpaired electrons. When such unpaired electron is there, then in d orbital only there is a transition takes place. So there are two different part in d orbital. D orbital in presence of ligands are separated as T2g and Eg. And in this case, if there are unpaired electrons, these unpaired electrons in presence of ligand absorbs the energy and goes to the higher energy orbital. But higher energy orbital is unstable and hence it comes back. While coming back, it emits light which falls in visible region and hence they are showing the color property. Okay. So color of the ions is because of what? Presence of unpaired electrons. When an electron forms from a lower energy d orbital is excited to a higher energy orbital, the energy of excitation corresponds to the frequency of light absorbed, and this frequency lies in visible region and hence we can see the color. That's why copper compounds are blue in color. Okay. So there are different colors like this. For example, chromium color is little bit yellowish in color. Okay. Mn, for example, KMnO4, it is purple color. Okay, so there are different colors shown by these transition elements are shown in figure 8.5 in the textbook. Okay, or they are given in table number 8.8. Okay, now observed color is complementary to the light absorbed, means whatever color light is absorbed, opposite to that it comes out, means which color we can see, it is the complementary, that is return gift of absorbed light. Okay, then frequency of light absorbed is determined by the nature of ligand, in which presence of ligand it is happened. Okay, that's why these elements in presence of water, that is aqueous solutions of these elements, they show different color. Now here the possible question is, why scandium 3 plus or titanium 4 plus or zinc 2 plus are colorless? These salts or these compounds are colorless because in this oxidation state, that is 3 plus or 4 plus of titanium, there are no unpaired electrons in d orbitals. Okay, that's why whenever there is no unpaired electron, it is dd transition, that is excitation from one d orbital to other d orbital does not takes place, which is called as dd transition, and hence they are colorless. So what answer you can write it is, if such question is asked, why the salts of or the compounds of scandium 3 plus or zinc 2 plus are colorless, then what we can say, there are no unpaired electrons and hence these compounds are colorless. Now next very important property again, or very useful property, is formation of complex compound. As the d orbitals, they are having 5 orbitals, so each can accommodate 2 electrons, means totally they are having the capacity to accommodate 10 electrons in d orbital, means they can have the large vacancy of orbitals, and because of that these elements they can bind with number of anions or neutral molecules, which we call it as ligands, and because of this they can form the complex compounds, and this is the characteristic property of the d block elements. For example, FeCN6 ion can combine with 6 cyanide ions, whereas platinum can combine with 4 chlorine atoms. Okay, so these anions or neutral molecules or the species which gives the pair of electron to the metal atom or ion is called as ligand, and such ligand can bind with metal ions. Okay, then why they are showing this large number of complex compound? The question can be asked. It is due to the comparatively smaller sizes of the metal ions and their high ionic charges, or else the availability of d orbitals for bond formation. So if you don't remember any other reason, at least write they contain or partially filled d orbitals or incomplete d orbitals. Then the catalytic property. In p block elements, we have studied the manufacturing of ammonia as well as manufacturing of nitric acid, and in that we have studied that either iron or molybdenum iron is used as a catalyst, molybdenum is used as a promoter, and nowadays instead of iron we can use the oxides of potassium and aluminium, is it? So like that, as a promoter, instead of molybdenum we can use potassium oxide and aluminium oxide as a promoter. Okay, but iron in the form of it can be used as a catalyst. Then in hydrogenation of oils, which gives fats, that is dalda, is it? In that nickel is used as a catalyst. Many reaction in which hydrogenation is carried out, even platinum is used as a catalyst. So why these D block elements acts as good catalyst? Again, the reason is because they contains partially filled d orbitals, and one more very important reason is they are having the ability to adopt multiple oxidation state, or they are having variable oxidation state. Okay, means and because of this they can form the complexes, and this is the reason why they are showing the catalytic property. Now what happens when we use as a catalyst the solid surface which is having the peaks, right? And these peaks are very gives more space to form the bond between reactant molecules and atoms of the surface of the catalyst, and this is how it results in increasing the concentration of reactants at catalyst surface. So activation energy is load, means in minimum activation energy or in minimum energy the reactant can react very easily. Okay, and therefore catalysts are required. Many times we use the catalyst to increase the rate of reaction, means to make it faster. Okay, so here one more example is given, that is vanadium pentoxide V2O5 is used in contact process, that is for manufacturing of sulfuric acid. Okay, or else nickel is used in catalytic hydrogenation. So these reasons are important, and the question can be asked why D block elements are showing the catalytic properties, or the question can be asked as D block elements are good catalyst. Give reason. So what you should write? First one is they contain partially filled d orbital. Second one, they are showing the variable oxidation state, and in catalyst when they are used as a catalyst as a solid surface easily forms the bond between reactant molecules and the catalyst. Okay, because they use 3d and 4s electrons for bonding, and hence activation energy is lowered. One more property, that is interstitial compounds. It's just like a trap, means in the structure, in the solid crystalline structure, if any other atom comes inside, it is get trapped. Okay, and such type of compounds are called as interstitial compounds. Okay, now which are the compounds? When small atoms like hydrogen, carbon or nitrogen are trapped inside the crystal lattice of the metals, these are called as interstitial compounds. Now why only these elements? Because these elements are having very small size and they can go easily in any structure. It's just like how the spider makes a web, and in that web any other insects come inside and get trapped. Okay, so these interstitial compounds are non-stoichiometric and are neither ionic nor covalent. Now non-stoichiometric means what? We cannot write the perfect ratio, just like how we can write for Fe2O3. So we can write Fe2O3 as Fe2O3, where we can write the ratio as 2s to 3. But this is called as stoichiometric. But there are some compounds which are non-stoichiometric, and these interstitial compounds are non-stoichiometric. For example, titanium carbide. C means carbide. Mn4n nitride, manganese nitride, or iron hydride, or titanium hydride. So in this case, oxidation state of the metal is not normal. Okay, so these are the characteristics of interstitial compounds. And why this has happened in d block elements? Because they are having incomplete or partially filled d orbitals, which gives lot of chance to accept the electrons. Okay, then physical and chemical properties of these compounds are they have high melting point than those of pure metals. Means when we compare the melting point with pure metals, these interstitial compounds are having more or high melting point. They are very hard. For example, some borides approach diamond in hardness. We know diamond is the hardest metal. Okay, sorry, hardest element, which is nothing but the allotrope of carbon. But when we compare borides, they are more than that. Okay, they retain metallic conductivity, means they are good conductors of electricity. They are chemically inert. Okay, means they are little bit non-reactive. Then one more property, that is alloy formation. Alloy means what? The combination of two or more metals, that is solid solution, homogeneous solid solution. This is already we have learned in solution topic. Okay, and how these alloys are prepared? By mixing the two or more metals in molten form, right? Then how this can be formed? Because of similar radii or other characteristics of transition metals, they readily form alloys. Now how these alloys are? They are very hard and they are having high melting point. For example, ferrous alloys with chromium, vanadium, tungsten, molybdenum and Mn are used for production of variety of steels and stainless steel. The vessels which we are using it in our home, they are made up of stainless steel. What do you mean by stainless steel? Stain means no stain. No stain remains, or we can remove the stain very easily. Such type of steel is called as stainless steel. Even we are using wrought iron or any other iron things, right? So these are alloys, which are ferrous alloys, that is iron alloys. Even in our day-to-day life, we are using some alloys like brass or bronze, which are with non-transition metals. For example, copper and zinc or copper and tin. These are non-transition metals. Okay, so this is how the properties of the transition metals are finished, and in next class we will study F block elements. Okay, the further part of the textbook, if you can see in D block elements, that is oxides and oxoanions of metals, even manufacturing of potassium permanganate and chromate, potassium, this is deleted. Okay, yes, thank you.